The three things that sabotage good managers and what to do instead. Most managers don't fail because they lack empathy. They fail because someone or something else is sabotaging their efforts. And this happens often quietly and often with good intentions. Saboteur number one, policies that reward drama over responsibility. Let's be honest. In so many organizations, human resources policies reward those employees who are the loudest, most fragile, and the most frequently unwell, while often ignoring reliable employees. And managers see this all the time. Managers see the effects of bad HR policies with good intentions in things like the same people struggling always at the same moment. Key moments, usually. And they see it where documentation replaces judgment, or process overrides common sense. And so accountability becomes legally risky rather than a cultural norm within the organization. So, how can wise empathy help us in this? Well, the advice would be to document patterns and not stories. Focus on the impact on the team and team performance rather than just individual claims. And escalate, take it to the next level. Talk to your boss about systemic misuse rather than individual emotion. And this brings us to the second one, which is conflict avoidance disguised as kindness. The thought or the feeling here is, if I confront this, then I might damage trust. So managers delay conversations and soften feedback until it's just meaningless, and hope that problems will just resolve themselves. And actually they often do, but many times they just don't. And those are the ones you need to jump on. You know, I had a subordinate who reported to me, and she came into our first meeting and all she had was a cup of coffee. And I had sent her an agenda for this meeting and everything. And she just brought a cup of coffee, which you think, that could be okay. But I said to her, in these meetings, I would like to really get some things done and make sure that they are efficient and as effective as possible. And my expectation is that when you come, you bring something to write with, and that we also have the agenda clearly in front of us. And she looked at me and she said, expectation, as if I had just, sneezed in her soup or something like this. These people never use the word expectation. This was just out of order and some sort of toxic leadership. So, as an agent of the company, I am obliged to break through those kind of things. Maybe that's become a little poisonous part of the culture that needs to be broken through, and you need courage and you need judgment and you need support from the people around you to do it. But it is an important battle worth having for managers and leaders in a company. Because there's a paradox here. Avoiding confrontation doesn't build trust, it breaks trust. And the people in your team will notice this if you are applying things inconsistently across the team, or where poor behavior gets just unchallenged, or the emotional reaction of an employee is what dictates the outcome. So how does wise empathy help us address this? Wise empathy helps you understand that a little short-term discomfort can prevent some long-term damage. And strong managers, they separate emotion from expectation, and they speak factually and objectively and unemotionally early rather than highly charged later. And they try to normalize correction or confrontation as genuine care and not some sort of punishment. So clarity is kindness, especially when you can deliver it early. Saboteur number 3 is the most insidious, and that is over-identification with an individual. This is really subtle, but some managers, they empathize so deeply with an employee that they lose sight of fairness, consistency, and the wider system of performance and goals, which is why you're a manager. You are an agent of the company. The performance of your team and the performance of your people is your number one priority. A way to get there is to use wise empathy and care for people. But number one for you is getting the job done in an efficient or profitable way. But the little saboteur here is whispering in your ear, saying things like, if I push here, well, then I'll feel cruel. Or you may even say, well, these people, they remind me so much of myself. And when I was in their shoes, I got up to the same kind of silliness. And so I'll overlook it. Or you may look at certain employees and say, well, they've had it harder than others. They've had a harder life, or they had a harder time here in the company. And you allow this to color your judgment. And at the point that empathy stops being a part of your leadership, then it becomes, as we referred to in the first video, fusion or sympathy. And that means taking on the burdens, the emotional baggage of another person. But wise empathy has a correction for this. Wise empathy always asks what serves the person and what serves the system or the team or the company. Mature leaders care deeply, but also keep a bit of distance between themselves and their employees. If I can make an aside here, this is probably one of the most difficult things as a new manager. You imagine that you're going out and you're taking an extra cigarette break with your friends at work. And then all of a sudden you are made the assistant manager. And now when your friends say, hey, should we sneak outside for a cigarette? You say, oh, no, that's against the rules. And we have to do this, and we have to get the performance, and we have to get the efficiency. And then people look at you and say, oh, now you're Mr. Big Stuff. Yeah. Now you're the queen of the department. Oh, I see how this goes. And your role really changes. And if you are too close to those people, well, you might give in and not show wise empathy. Giving yourself some distance is part of what being a really effective manager is. These mature leaders support growth through consequences. And remember that they're responsible for the whole team and its performance, not just one loud individual. And that distance isn't coldness. It is mature, and it allows you to be fair. So in general, good managers don't really need a lot more empathy training. They need the permission and the tools to use empathy wisely. This includes being able to put down boundaries, use their judgment, and now and again show some courage. Wise empathy doesn't remove consequences from behavior. It helps people grow through it. And that is what strong cultures, performance-oriented cultures, are built on. So if all of this reflects what you're seeing in your organization, the tension between policy and performance and care, well, let me know. These are exactly the kinds of things that I work with in leadership workshops. And until the next time, take care.